Well, there are three main types of protected views. Firstly, there are regional views, who are controlled and designated by regional assemblies. The main purpose of them is to protect significant landmarks, cityscapes and river prospects. Secondly, there are local protected views. The local planning authorities designate these and control them. And lastly, there are World Heritage sites, which are particularly sensitive to protected views. They're controlled by UNESCO.
Michael, how are these type of views actually defined?
Well, there are two broad types, really. The first is qualitative views, which are things like river prospects, panoramas. So, for instance, from Primrose Hill, there is a panorama across the city of London and into Canary Wharf. Within that, there are what's called protected views, which are quantitative views, which are accurately defined in three-dimensional space and can be imagined as a cone emanating from the viewpoint towards the landmark which is being protected. Now, there are three key features about these quantitative viewing corridors. The first is that there is it's like a no-go zone whatsoever, which is the actual view from the viewpoint to the landmark. Then around that, there's a qualitative view, which is called the lateral assessment area, which protects an encroachment of buildings into the area around that view. And then thirdly, there is the backdrop behind the landmark to ensure that when you see the landmark, the view behind it doesn't sort of infringe or encroach on the view.
And what challenges do developers and architects face in considering protective views?
Well, the primary one is that if you're developing a site which is in a viewing corridor, then the primary focus is to ensure that the scheme will be beneath the quantitative view. The second key aspect is to ensure that the scheme has been designed in a sympathetic way so that it doesn't encroach on the panorama in the wider field either.
But you're talking actually about sort of areas, particularly London. I'm guessing that that's actually going to involve lots of authorities as well, isn't it?
It does. It affects many different authorities. For instance, there was a scheme recently called the Beetham Tower, which wasn't far from Blackfriars Bridge. And although the actual scheme was in Southwark, and clearly Southwark was the local authority determining the scheme in terms of planning permission, because it was so high, the GLA also got involved. And then there were public consultee received by Westminster and Lambeth adjoining local authorities who also had an input into the decision.
So you're talking about the Beetham Tower. In such cases, would all five authorities have to actually be consulted and actually get permission from all of them?
Not quite. Permission is granted by the local authority within which the scheme is located, in that case Southwark. And also the GLA would also have an input into whether the decision would be granted. As I mentioned, Westminster and Lambeth were consultees in the process, so they didn't actually have a veto decision-making right as such.